Hey friend, welcome to Healthy with Heather Brown. If you don't know where to start with balancing being healthy and loving the life you already have, I got you, friend. And yes, of course, we're still going to enjoy some Chick-fil-A. I'm here to come alongside you and encourage you to fall more in love with your creator, your spouse, your kids, and your own health journey. We'll talk about how to let your good things grow until they become daily habits, with the occasional dad joke and point of view from my Yankee hubby, Eric. Don't stress. Let's hop on this Hot Mess Express together. So join me, Heather Brown, as we unpack what it looks like to live a life well loved. Hey, everybody. It's been a while since you've heard from just me and Eric. Eric, welcome back to a full show.
It has been a while. It's good to be back.
Yes, that's right. We are sitting in here late at night. So Eric's being a champ, being in here out of his prime time. And I went out of my comfort zone not too long ago with him recording in the morning. So thanks for dealing with my late night hours, babe.
If I seem just a little bit off tonight, I'm definitely more of a morning person. But you know what? We're going to push through. And I think part of this could kind of go into the topic that we're discussing tonight. So
absolutely.
It could work out.
Yes, for sure. So first off, super honest answer, Eric, and I can answer it first or you can answer it first, either way. But when I say mind-body connection, what's the first thing that comes to your mind, if anything?
Well, I think the first thing that comes to my mind is one of those comes before the other. And for me personally, typically, I feel like the body comes before the mind. Whereas if I'm ever feeling fatigued or lethargic, or I wouldn't say depressed, but just not, as energetic or how I would want to be, a lot of times it relates from some kind of physical aspect that is lacking in my life. And the way that I will kind of fix that issue is by going to the gym or doing some activity, whether it's golf or just even playing outside with the kids. A lot of times just doing a physical activity will jumpstart, I would say, my mental health.
Yeah. See, I think that's a great answer. Look at you go. And I would say probably if you were to say you have a physical shortcoming right now, it's a lot of times I feel like for you, it is that you've had to work on call or a night shift or what have you. And that is tough on anybody for sure, from a mental and physical aspect.
Yeah, the lack of sleep does not help with that. But I mean, I think that kind of goes a little bit more, once again, to the physical aspect of the mind-body connection, more specifically to the body connection. And I think you will agree with this, that if you don't get good sleep, then that's going to play a huge role in your mind-body connection.
Absolutely. So the very first thing that I ever learned about mind-body connection definitely takes it back to my roots at Pure Barre, when I first discovered what it meant to put your mind in the muscle when you're working out. So like in Pure Barre, if you would say down an inch, up an inch, then I had to instruct women, like, you've got to put your mind in your inner and outer thighs to make that squeeze happen, or else you're just bending your knees and we're not really getting much of a workout in here. And then I did a quick Google search just to see what the official stance was from Google. And their definition is mind-body-spirit connection means our wellness comes not just for physical health, but for mental health and spiritual health as well. For example, if we're feeling stressed, we may notice our muscles are tensing, our mind is racing. What kind of do you notice physically play out when you feel stress?
Well, I'm not entirely sure how to answer that question, but one thing that I was thinking about when you were just speaking about the mind-body connection, one specific example that I think of for myself, and I hate to be this person when people talk about running marathons or training for marathons. I've only done it once, all I'm going to say about that. But in regards to specifically the mind-body connection, one thing that I specifically remember doing when training for the marathon was, some people are big into listening to music when they're running or training for something. Whereas for me, it was very important to be in tune with how my body was feeling, and specifically how my breathing was when I was running long distances. And for me, focusing on breathing and just concentrating on that, slow breaths, especially going up inclines, that was one of the main things that I would say that got me through difficult parts of runs, and even actually during the race, focusing on the breathing and just concentrating just exactly kind of how you're talking about specifically with muscles and Pure Barre. For me, it was these breaths that were then kind of what I was focusing on and one step after the other. And for me, that was a huge part of the mind body connection.
Absolutely. I think it takes a lot of mental grit to get through a half or a full marathon. I can only speak to the half marathon. I've never done a full like Eric Brown, so snaps for that. But I would agree that in the beginning, I viewed health as strictly physical, like thinking more so about my muscles and the external. And then personally, I realized after having Leighton, which, he's now 7 years old, that I needed to work on the other, I would say, buckets of health or facets of health. There's that Bible verse that has become so key for me in this whole journey of mind, body, spirit connection. It's Mark 12:30-31. And it says, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. And I think that I used Pure Barre and my fitness, my physical health as such a crutch to get me through anything stressful that once I had Leighton and I had that 4th-degree tear and my doctor told me you can't, walk past the mailbox for 6 weeks, that really kind of brought me to my knees. And that is when I kind of started to struggle with a little bit of depression and just crying, which was, Eric, how many times have you seen me cry multiple times per day?
I would say never.
Except for those first few weeks after having Leighton. Now, don't get me wrong. I do cry occasionally because I'm female and human.
How many times have you seen me cry?
Maybe 2 or 3 times ever. It's different to get a few tears.
Yeah. I was just curious to see what you'd say about that.
Yes. But anyway, I think that it's been really revolutionary for me learning more, I guess, a little bit as we've gotten older and then also going through becoming a mother and a dad for you, watching how, my mental health has become really integral in my physical health as well. And how I've learned that a lot of times, even when I'm working out, it's almost like I'll have these moments where I get almost like spiritual clarity too. Like God will bring something to my mind. So then what I think that I really want to do here with moms, though, is just redefine health, because a lot of times for mom, we hear health and we think being skinny or eating broccoli or going to the gym and working out 1,000,000 miles per minute every which way we go, and really being able to put an emphasis on your spiritual and mental health as well as your physical health, because they truly are also interconnected. And now it's so exciting to see the research coming out about how our minds are connected to so much more than just that muscle shake during a workout like we were talking about. So next thing is that I heard Dr. Will Cole, that I've interviewed on the podcast before, and we can link to his episode in the show notes, say that stress can be just as harmful to the body as cigarettes. And in fact, there are books out there like The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk, which I'm probably butchering that name, that focus solely on the fact that our bodies are in fact our keepers and hold the clues to what we're facing mentally and emotionally. I'm astounded. And I think, Eric, can I ask you a question? Will you think about maybe doing a little bit of research, like clinical research, and see what you can find about mind, body, spirit that we could maybe edumacate in future marriage corners?
Sure, I'll see what I can find.
Amazing. So, Eric, how would you say that you and I individually make time to devote to our spiritual health, our mental health, and our physical health, whether it be date nights or, just whatever that looks like?
Yeah, I think we've talked about a little bit of this before, specifically in regards to our physical health. You have your time where you try and work out pretty much every day. For me, it's the same thing. And it's one thing I was actually thinking about today at work, just how trying to get into routines and how important routines are, whether that's working out, physical aspect, that could be praying as far as the spiritual aspect, but just getting into routines and how difficult sometimes it is to be in routines. And I'm drawing a blank right now on specifically the example that I was thinking about today at work. It could have been about patients or patient care or just the process, but specifically just getting into routines and how those can be beneficial and how they play a role in the mind body connection.
Absolutely. And I think that a lot of times habits or creating healthy practices is what a lot of times people will call that. I will say, Eric, he is like the early bird that caught the worm, because he's up and out the door at 5 a.m. He's rolling out to go work out, and I'm much later at 8:30 and still feeling like that's early. But Eric, what are some of the warning signs that you'd say when maybe your mental or physical health are getting out of whack in a tiring or stressful period?
I think it's a little bit how we're talking about a little bit. And full disclosure right now, Heather and I are starting a little bit of a diet. And obviously, when you change your diet, it can definitely affect how you feel both physically and mentally. And one of the things we do is we try and limit refined sugars. Right now, I definitely feel like I'm feeling the effects of reduced sugar levels and carbohydrates. It makes you a little hazy, a little foggy, but specifically as it relates to your question, what are some warning signs? I mean, and even last night before we started this cleaning up of our diets, I was like, hey, just think we need to give each other some grace because I know there's gonna be times where maybe we're not as patient with each other. And, I said it's just really important to give each other grace. And I think I was mainly saying that for myself, but I also know it affects you as well too.
Like when you had to tell me that one time, hey, Heather, I think you're kind of like snapping on the kids a little quick. Maybe you should think about if, like, would that be your normal reaction if Ben yelled in the house, or are you just like going to level 10 immediately? And unfortunately, I was going to level 10 immediately. So I would definitely say that some of the things that I notice when I'm getting out of whack or in a stressful period is, number one, I tend to almost dysregulate in my sleep. So Eric a lot of times will have to call me out on that of like, hey, you haven't been coming to bed at the same time as I do. And I mean, I do get in a really bad habit of being up until midnight and 1 a.m. And while, yes, my body thinks it can do that at the time, how do I feel the next morning when the alarm goes off at 6:45? Like hot garbage express, like real bad. And I also think that I would just say like I become more disconnected. I don't even realize that I'm doing it. And I can sometimes, I think, being a 3 on the Enneagram and very driven, I can sometimes let work, life, like become, that's a big weakness of mine that I really have to rely on Eric to like hold me accountable in, which I do appreciate. Unfortunately, some spouses are not working up to the level yet where they say like, hey, essentially like your mental health is about to suffer if you don't get some sleep or you don't quit working so much. So I appreciate that you're willing to do that for me, babe. Hey girl, hey, quickly gonna interrupt to say please RSVP for my first ever live health workshop on Zoom. This means you can chat with me more one-on-one style and live versus pre-recorded like the podcast, which, hello, please, I would so love to not show up to 0 people there. RSVP at the link in the show notes for April 25th at 12 p.m. CST so I can see your face, because you guys always have to see my face plastered all over everywhere, and discuss how to become the healthiest and most confident version of yourself without getting swept up in hustle and comparison traps. What are you waiting for? Let's go.
Yeah, I think we definitely both hold each other accountable. And a lot of times, obviously, we have a lot of blind spots in our life. And I think that's one of the best things about marriage is that your spouse typically knows you better than anybody else, sometimes even better than you know yourself, or even, I guess, even better than you want to admit about yourself, because there are so many things that we don't want to see in ourselves or we don't want to own up to at times, that it's important to have a spouse or a loved one be honest with you in a loving nature. Then it's on the person that receives that information to take it for what it is, that it's coming from a person that loves you and wants what's best for you. But oftentimes you'll hear these things from people and people will get very defensive if they hear what may sound like criticism, when in fact it's actually just a loving observation that, they want you to reflect upon, and they really want what's best for you. But once again, it's kind of what we talked about before. It's very important when you discuss those things to do it in the right time, at the right place, and in the right manner. And if those 3 things aren't met, a lot of times those conversations cannot be as productive as they should be.
Yes. And one thing that I really appreciate about you too, Eric, that I feel like you help me out so much with my mental and emotional health is when I get super stressed out, you're so good to crack a joke or to make me laugh. And it is scientifically proven that when you smile more throughout your day and when you laugh, that literally like lowers your blood pressure. You're proven to be a happier, healthier person when you laugh, when you joke, and when you're in those disciplines and rhythms like you're talking about. You're working out, you're in the word, all those things. So going along with that, sometimes Christians fall in the trap of thinking that their spiritual life is separate from their bodies or their minds, and nothing could be further from the truth, actually. God came to earth fully God and fully man. Eric and I have been watching The Chosen recently, and we think that they do such a good job of making sure that they emphasize how Jesus came to earth as a human baby, showing how much God cares deeply about our human experience. And so, again, I just think about how that verse, Mark 10:31, it talks about we love God with all our hearts, our minds, our souls, and our strength. the connection is there. And I find that a lot of times when I'm out of whack, it's because I'm putting too much emphasis on one bucket or area of my life. So too much emphasis on work or too much emphasis on just working out. But if I don't also stay disciplined in my spiritual life, man, my momming, my wifing, my being a great friend, all those things are definitely going to suffer. So how do we harness this link between mind and body without getting into what I like to call, like the woo woo or crazy side of the wellness world? Eric, have you even heard the term woo woo before?
I have heard it. I'm sure you hear it more in your circles than I
Yes,
do.
so true.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this. What do you think of when you hear new age?
Honestly, when I hear new age, I think of typically, I hate to stereotype, but women that will talk about crystals and, it could be horoscopes.
Hmm.
A lot of times you'll hear, oh, you're an Aries or, I'm a Taurus and how do these things go together? And I really don't give it any time, but that's the first things that I think about.
Yeah, for sure. And I think a lot of times, especially in yoga and Pilates, because of their background, a lot of times there is, Buddhism and like going into your inner goddess, like all these kind of things come to mind. And so I just want to remind you, and I actually think Blake from The Crappy Christian did a really good job of this on one of her recent podcasts. She talked about how mindfulness and meditating on God's word is a biblical concept and how actually like we're letting people steal these ideas from like biblical historical things and like twisting it. Eric, you were talking recently about something that's been twisted historically. Do you remember that? We were talking about it around Easter. What were you saying? Do you remember around the dinner table?
Well, I think what we were talking about around the dinner table is there's ancient truths that a lot of times in today's culture that are being forgotten or they're not being emphasized as far as the ancient truths as they relate to Jesus. But there's also ancient falsehoods that going back to, the beginning of days, there are still the same falsehoods that were being preached then that are being preached now. And whether that's kind of like what you were just talking about with these new age teachings, it could be false teaching, false prophets, people that are presenting information from a position of authority that is just not accurate. And, it really is leading people astray.
Absolutely. And so I'm really thankful that we can shine a light on this because I think history always repeats itself. And I just want to make sure that you guys don't think that just because you take deep breaths or because you slow down and do stretching or something like that, it doesn't mean you're going all woo woo and doing new age. Like take back what the Bible empowers you with and meditating on God's word, memorizing scripture. If you want to like stretch and do some yoga poses, it doesn't mean you have to like be praying to your inner goddess while you do it and thanking Mother Earth. Like, the truth of creation. And so don't be afraid to marry those things and take deep breaths and thank your Savior for creating such a beautiful world around you. For us, when we're trying to calm down our boys, I even think about when they fall down and scrape their knees. What do we typically do? We either offer them some kind of food, water, some kind of distraction. We tell them to take some deep breaths. So I think it's the same principle for us where I just think when we get stressed out, I try to remember it's okay to stop and pray and take deep breaths. And I even like grounding, which I know that also sounds woo woo, but going outside and walking barefoot, getting in the sunlight, getting vitamin D. It's been proven that if you walk for 20 minutes each day, that helps lower your anxiety and stress and obviously getting good sleep. But is there anything else that you do, babe, that you would say really helps lower your stress when you do start having those panicky moments?
I think one thing that helps for me when I do wake up early is a lot of times, when I'll be getting ready, I'll just take that brief second very early in the morning, just try and think of things that I'm thankful for in the morning. And I try and focus on those things. Specifically, a lot of times I'll just be super thankful and just thank God for our family and for you and our marriage and our two healthy boys. And one thing that I speak about a lot is perspective.
Mm.
And I feel like just taking that brief time in the morning to be thankful for the blessings that you have, especially the simple blessings that you take for granted a lot, it really allows you to put things into perspective to begin your day. It is amazing if you start your day with that kind of a mindset of a perspective. You could even be thinking of there could be something personal going on in your life that is very, very serious. It could be a loved one that's sick. It could be a family member that just passed away, the worst things that we typically think about. But if there's a way that you can put it into perspective amongst all the hardships that the world really does present, and then also knowing that, suffering is a part of this world. And a lot of times we're sanctified through that suffering. But also too, it allows you to be grateful for the things that you do have, thinking about others. And I'm not trying to compare my hardships or our hardships to other people's hardships, but we really do have so much to be thankful for. I know a lot of the listeners obviously are here in the United States, and we really are blessed to be in the country that we are currently living and to have all the things that we do. So taking that just brief moment in the morning to be thankful, have perspective, it really helps me out each and every day.
Hi, friend. Are you enjoying this episode? Hit that plus sign in the top right of your Apple Podcast app or the follow button in your Spotify app or wherever you're listening. That way you automatically get each new episode without having to search for it. You're welcome. And I will say, I really appreciate it when I wake up in the morning, because Eric has been up for so much longer than me. And I wake up to a text message from him that's telling me something that he's grateful for about me or the boys that day. It's a great way for me to start my day too. So I would highly encourage you guys, if you haven't already, to wake up in the morning, try to look at the morning sunlight, think about something you're grateful for, thank the Lord for it. And maybe if it does involve somebody that you love, maybe even just text them and, fill their heart with some happiness that morning. Well, it can't be denied, I don't think, in order to start healing on all levels, healing mentally, emotionally, and physically, we have to start addressing health from a whole person perspective. One thing I talk about all the time is finding your why and how it's a foundation to rediscover your confidence and stay motivated to practice discipline and caring for your body while avoiding burnout too. So I know a lot of times when Eric and I are struggling or tired or don't want to go to the gym or feel demotivated, thinking about my why really helps me. And I don't mean a why like the number on the scale. I mean, like, what is your big picture reason for getting healthy? Eric, have you shared yours before? What your why is?
I just want to look great in a bathing suit.
Eric's doing it for that flex. Show the muscles.
Just kidding. I mean, there may have been a point in my life where that was one of the motivating factors. And, honestly, it probably still is a little bit, but really, I would say that my main motivating factor for my physical health is my mental health, just kind of like how I talked about at the beginning. It really is amazing. If you're confident in yourself, if you're confident in, your physical health, it really does transition over to your mental health. Now, granted, it could be completely reversed for other people, where if you feel like mentally you are healthy, then you can then focus on the physical and it kind of flows in that direction. I think that's what's interesting about each person. It's kind of like introverts and extroverts. Now it'd be interesting to me, being an introvert, if more people like myself, it flows more from physical to mental as opposed to mental to physical. What would you say, being an extrovert? Do you think your health flows more in one direction? Is it equal, or what would you say?
I would say, don't get me wrong. I mean, in high school and college and like right after, I think that I did pretty much predominantly work out because I was like, I want to have abs and I want to have a six pack in my bathing suit and look real cute.
But was that flowing to your mental health? Was that determining your mental health?
I don't think it was. Now, I think that I work out more for my mental health than I even do my physical health. The physical health is like the added bonus of my mental stress release at this point in my life, which maybe that's just a as you're getting older thing too. Maybe. I don't know. But anyway, so if you guys are looking for your why and you want help with how to develop your mental, spiritual, physical, relational health, Eric and I would love to invite you guys to connect with us. Make sure you follow us on Instagram. I have so many resources on the website that I can point you to. And I think that the number one cornerstone for me, then I think therefore you and me and our family functioning well in our health overall, which I didn't even make this connection until this year. I always thought it was meal planning. But what I've realized is that it's my Sunday reset. It started as I'm just writing a meal plan out on Sundays, but now I'm like, no, this is actually a full on reset where I'm thinking, I got to communicate with my spouse and figure out what's going on this week. I got to figure out what's going on with the kids. I've got to figure out what's going to work for my schedule this week with my workouts. I need to plan my meals so we can fuel our bodies to get through everything. And it's just become so much of a way of life where now when Eric and I are out of town and we don't get that Sunday reset, I just feel off that week. Would you agree?
Yeah, I definitely, being an introvert and a planner, very analytical, I definitely like to have a plan and have something written out. Typically, you really do a great job with that. It's one of the things I'm most thankful for with you. But yeah, that Sunday reset really is just key to the balance in our life. And I think keeping that mind body connection as well, too.
Totally. Because it helps us plan out when we're going to church, if there's extra church things that we need to account for, or the boys or VBS or whatever. So spiritual health. And then our relationship, I'm using that Sunday reset to figure out our date night and texting the babysitter, all those things. So definitely Sunday reset has become a cornerstone tool that helps us keep track of all the ways that we're investing in relationships, mental health, physical health, and more. So if all this sounds too good to be true to you, I promise it's not. I'm going to link a free meal plan and grocery list in the show notes for you guys to start right now with that one small step. And I would say at this point, Eric and I probably spend less than 30 minutes figuring out our meal plan and our schedule for the week. And it might take you a little longer in the beginning, but opening up that communication pathway with your partner and getting on the same page going into the week, I actually think you'll find will benefit you in way more than just saving money on a meal plan and knowing what you're eating. Would you agree, babe?
Yeah, I think it's like with most things, like you were saying, it might take a little bit longer and kind of to hone in exactly what your Sunday reset, because your Sunday reset is going to be completely different than ours. And I think you're going to provide those resources that really help people individualize their Sunday reset.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's just going to be different for each person. And that's kind of what's so great and unique about doing that practice.
Yes, absolutely. And I love what you said. You said that practice. So that habit, that like discipline, so good. Well, if you guys have never heard of mind, body, spirit connection before, or maybe you didn't know what it meant, or you feel still a little bit like unsure, feel free to leave us a review down below. Let us know what you want us to expound upon about this in the future. If there's any free resources we can help you guys out, then I would love to hear those suggestions as well. And remember, like Eric said, everyone's going to look different. We call it the Sunday reset because that's the day that works for us. But if you're off work on Fridays and you need it to be the Friday reset, find what works for you and find your why. Well, we're so thankful you guys joined us. We hope you have a great week. Eric, any sign-offs?
Till next time.
All right. Love you guys. Have a great day. Hey, if you're loving the show, click that follow button on your podcast app. This will ensure you won't miss a single episode. I'll see you next time.